So we ready to kick her off there, Chair?
Yeah, I guess so. I can't actually, let me change my view. I can't see who's all here. Looks like Thomas, no Thomas, but we've got everyone else. Is that right?
Looks right.
All right, then I will call this meeting to order. Checking the time, 5:31.
All right.
I guess we do a roll call first.
Okay. Commissioner Emelson? Franz? Is Commissioner Franz? Okay. Commissioner Lisk?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer?
Here.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Chairperson Montague?
Here.
And still no Emerson. Okay.
I guess we have a work session this week. Is there anything that we need to discuss before we hop into that? Okay, here we go. Discussion regarding requests pertaining to Lot 3 PUD Ridgway Land Company subdivision. Revised layout, design, and density to approve PUD and final plat. Again, Lot 3 PUD Ridgway Land Company subdivision east of Highway 550, north of Hunter Parkway and west of Red Cliff Drive. Parcel number as noted. Zone district GC, general commercial base zoning. Current use mostly vacant with office building and parking lot at the southwest corner of Lot 3. Applicant Joe Nelson and Jack Young to build Ridgway LLC. Owner Rob Hunter, managing partner Ridgway Land Company. And I will hand it over to TJ.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Sounds like you guys got a lot more snow than we got here, so a little jealous. So yeah, what we have in front of us this evening is, first off, it's a public meeting, not a public hearing. So procedurally, that's a little bit different, and we're really kind of looking for some guidance from the commission on this. So I'll go through my stuff pretty quickly, and I really want to be able to turn it over to the applicants to have that conversation, and then we'll be here to answer any questions that you might have through the dialogue. So just by way of background, the Ridgway Land Company subdivision was originally created in 1990. The subdivision created a total of 12 lots, rights of way for Cimarron Drive, various utility easements, and about 4.25 acres of common open space and greenbelt area. Of the 12 lots, 9 of them were for commercial use, 2 were for motel uses, and 1, lot 3, which is what we're talking about this evening, was identified as being a PUD, as a separate document. The PUD identifies building envelopes, parking space requirements, maximum customer floor area, internal circulation, parking lot design, in addition to other dimensional standards of lot layout and design. The subdivision plat restrictions were also recorded in 1990, and that document, separate from the PUD, also identifies limitations and restrictions on the property, such as parking lot design, access and circulation design, building footprints, trash receptacle locations, the need for construction documents, and general procedures to submit plans to the town for review and approval. So that's just a little bit of background. What the applicant is requesting they'd like to receive some direction from the Planning Commission on how the proposed revisions that they're proposing to the plat and the PUD should be interpreted, and the proper process through which the application should be submitted and reviewed. So what we've done, staff's opinion at this point, based on, and I'll let the memo kind of speak for itself, is that there are some material changes, significant changes to the PUD and plat warranting a new, to go back through that process again, including a sketch plan, preliminary plan, and final plat for both the PUD and the plat, the subdivision plat. But let's see here. Yeah, so I think that's kind of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have on anything in the memo. But I also want to make sure that there's ample time for the applicants, Joe, and I don't necessarily see Jack in here, but maybe Joe to speak about it.
Thanks, TJ. Do the commissioners have any questions as of yet?
I guess my question, and I'm probably one of the few people in town that was actually around 30 years ago, 32 years ago when this was going through the process, and I was actually on the planning commission at the time. So that's the crazy bit. I don't recall though. I mean, it sounds like the PUD was actually fully approved and recorded with the assessor's office and all that. And I guess this is a question for TJ and Preston maybe. And I see Bo on here. I'm not sure if that's our Bo, the attorney, but a fully approved PUD like this, even though it's never been fully developed, it just continues into perpetuity and could be developed at any time based on the original layout and all the details entailed in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our understanding. And if I'm wrong, correct me, Bo, but basically the PUD is entitlement allowances and it's running with it. There's no limitation on that through that PUD process.
And is that still the case when we approve a PUD? There's no.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt, Michelle. Hi,
Okay,
John.
okay.
It is
Hello.
Bo, the town
Welcome,
council, legal counsel. So anyways, yeah, we typically set it up that, once the PUD is approved, that kind of continues into perpetuity. As you know, Michelle, we have the preliminary plat process that is more of a short term where you have to come back if you haven't gone to final. So, but that's the area that we're dealing with here. And, coupled with that, we've kind of, before turning it over to the applicant in terms of looking to amend the existing PUD, I felt like it would be good for the planning commission members to be able to provide feedback in terms of the scope of the project and what their thoughts are, given that it is somewhat of a change from what was envisioned when it was initially approved.
Thank you.
This is Jennifer. I had a question on the zoning. I guess I was a little confused. So the zoning for in the original PUD was general commercial. Is it now mixed use? It was mentioned that that area was identified as mixed use. So is that something that we're here to decide on, or is that something that's already been decided?
Sure. So it's a little bit convoluted. I think the mixed use that you're referring to is the comprehensive plan land use classification.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the guiding document, the blueprint, if you will, that then gets interpreted or applied, if you will, and implemented through zoning. And the zoning for the property is general commercial, but it also has a PUD kind of to it also. So what the PUD does, at least in this particular case, it allows you to amend certain components of that underlying zone district. So it's kind of a mesh of both straight zoning, general commercial, and the particular elements that they wanted at the original time to approve the PUD. Does that help?
Yes.
So residential is allowed there.
It's a conditional use, yeah.
Yep. So, and the way the PUD language allows reads is that conditional uses can be allowed in the PUD process. So, yeah. So if it's a conditional use in the underlying zone, it can be allowed in the PUD process.
Any other questions, clarifications from the commission?
I guess I'm just curious, TJ, whether you're thinking we should turn it over to Joe and or anybody else who wants to speak on behalf of the developer to make their case before we state our opinions about it. Is that what you're thinking?
I would definitely urge that. Yep.
Okay.
Great. We will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, this is Joe Nelson
And this is Doug McFarland.
and Doug McFarland, yeah. And I think I would just like Doug McFarland to start if that's okay with you guys.
Hey, Doug.
Hey,
Yeah.
everybody.
Sure. Hey,
So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to kind of run this by everybody. I think, obviously, as John alluded to, he probably is the only one with the full-on history, but this has been going on for a while. There have been various things that have happened on this property over the years. And I think, we really appreciate the opportunity to just sort of lay out in what the main thing is, what our goals are for creating a good project. And I think that, we feel that this can be a really exciting project because of the fact that there is infrastructure in the ground that's final platted. So we have, sewer, water, we have roads, we have more space than in some other areas in terms of availability for parking. We feel like, these aspects mean that this is a good place to create a development. We also feel, and we've thought a lot about this, is that because since 1990, very little has happened on that parcel, we feel that that's a clear sign that the 92,000 square feet of straight up commercial is not a good fit for either the needs of the town or for the market the way time has evolved. So we feel that a mixed use project, which is in keeping with the current master plan goals, to create a mix of housing types, to create a mix of commercial and retail, creates a more viable project that'll be more of an asset to the town than trying to force fit into all commercial. That being said, what our attempt here is very much geared to taking a hard and close look at what is approved and platted on the ground as an underlying GC parcel, received final plat in 1990, as TJ explained and is in the staff report. And we feel like that basically, we want to be able to take and work with the utilities that are in the ground, the access points, all of the things that make sense about the PUD, and then do tweaks to it to create a better project. We had suggested that maybe this isn't a classic start from the beginning, full sketch plan, full preliminary plat, full new final plat process, not because we want to get out of providing information or creating understandings and agreements on what the design looks like with the town. Rather, because it seems like going back to the full drawing board when we already have utilities in the ground that we're working around. And a lot of the things that a subdivision checklist process as contemplated when you're starting with a raw piece of land don't really apply here. That's sort of why we're running it up the flagpole as a potential plat amendment. And the difference would be that we wouldn't do a sketch plan or a preliminary plat per se, but rather we would work with staff for engineering input. We would work with P&Z or the Planning Commission on any appropriate changes like conditional uses for changes in height or, you know, density and mix of uses. So it's not like anything would be off the table for discussion. It's just that what we would like to do is avoid sort of front-loaded engineering heavy checklist approach to agreeing on what should the project look like, to take this sort of tricky framework of stuff that's in the ground and agree on how to make this a good viable project as an infill development without having to go all the way to the end of engineering like you would do on a sketch plan in order to talk about whether the project works or not. So, you know, I think we attempted to put in the project package enough information to show where the footprints are now, where the utilities are now, how we would work with as closely as possible the footprints, the areas, the runoffs, some broad brush utility calcs, and sort of, we understand that nobody can say, yeah, it looks lovely in a vacuum. So we're trying to provide information, but we also would love to get into a more collaborative place where we can have these discussions on the broader concepts before we turn it into a discussion of, have you met the engineering guidelines? Check, 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 check. And, you know, in my opinion, I think that would be a more time-effective process for both the applicant and for the town. I think it would result in a better dialogue about things that are good about what's in the ground, things that might need to be adjusted, and not get bogged down right away out of the gate on, does this approach of utilizing the framework of the existing PUD make sense? You know, not get so bogged down in the engineering aspects of a submittal to where we get lost in that process and aren't able to have that open dialogue to determine if we're heading in the right overall direction. You know, we feel like, as is lined out in the narrative, that the changes not only provide a viable project solution within the framework, but that, you know, we're basically working with the current wording of the master plan, which has, you know, diverse mix of retail, commercial, multifamily component is, you know, contemplated in this zone. So yes, we understand that it's changing things. We also understand fully that by proposing 3-story, and while we're not pushing the densities to the higher ends of the allowables, we're trying to work within the square footage parameters established by the PUD. You know, we feel like by going to 3-story, we can free up more space around the buildings in a more open feeling. We can minimize runoff, and we can create more availability for flexibility on achieving a parking solution that works for everybody. So, you know, I think I had written a narrative to TJ which we talked about a little bit, but didn't really have a definitive response to my sort of contention that this should be a plat amendment as opposed to a start over sketch plan full process. And, I guess we're not trying to minimize that there are things that need to be addressed. We're just trying to come up with what makes sense to establish a framework for a dialogue where we can really talk about the project parameters and the goals. And for example, if everybody says, forget it, no matter how you deal with the GC regs for mitigating size and scale, we don't want to see 3-story buildings. I mean, that's a quantum change that affects all the engineering downstream from that decision. And so those are the kind of decisions we would love to have an open dialogue about and agree that, okay, here's why we want to do it. Here's our reasoning. And we, try to work on getting people to either get behind it. And, we figured that could start with the Planning Commission and then lead into what we would hope would be a real open dialogue with TJ and staff to sort of get it to a place where, our proposals provide information, but we don't go straight into, in order to review this and have a hearing, you have to have full sketch plan documentation. So I think, however the approach is in terms of the approval process, I think the key to us is more that we want to figure out how to establish this open dialogue to work closely together with the town, all the cards on the table, that here's what we have approved on the ground. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's what the numbers that we're proposing are now. And then there'll be increasing levels of information and documentation that'll help everyone to feel okay and good about where it's all heading. But, it seems like changing the mix, changing the, to mixed use, getting approval for the height, all those things fit into that framework. And then there's obviously going to be new construction drawings that would need to be done, whether they're within a amended plat process or whether they're within a full-on subdivision process that document any required changes to infrastructure. There's a drainage study to bear out what's actually happening on the ground. We feel like it'll be less impactful with this approach, but all those things obviously need to be fleshed out and borne out. So I guess what we're saying is, rather than jumping out of the gate with a checklist-driven full subdivision process, we would like to brainstorm about how to work collaboratively and closely with the town to create the best project using the framework of what's already been approved. And, we look forward to that dialogue because, I've done this type of project in different municipalities around here. I've worked a lot over the years with the town of Ridgway. And it seems to me that the most successful projects are the ones where everybody is really thinking about, sort of brainstorming together and looking for solutions and looking at how to move forward. And to me, that doesn't mean that you can't change horses or tweak something or make something better and, hear different sides of a discussion, but it does allow for that more open concept level discussion that to me speaks more to what the design looks like than making sure that all the T's are dotted crossed and the I's are dotted as we do the engineering, which has to happen. And we're not saying that that wouldn't be done. It's just how does it fit into a framework that works for everybody? So anyway, I'll turn it over to Joe if that's okay with everybody. I'm happy to answer any questions. And, we thought a lot about this, and it's obviously a challenge to, instead of starting with a nice blank slate and saying, oh, okay, let's do a subdivision. This is one where, there's stuff in the ground that has been approved for a long time, and there's absolutely no point in just saying, let's get rid of it and start over. And that's the framework that we're coming at it from. So thanks, everybody.
You're muted, Michelle.
I know. Thanks, Doug.
Sure.
Joe, go ahead.
I don't see, oh, there I am. Okay. Thanks, Doug, and thanks you guys for taking the time here to listen to us. I just would probably say Doug did as good a job as better than I can do in describing all of this to you guys. But our real intention, and I think you'll see in our outline, is to create a really fun, dynamic project that the town can be proud of. We're interested in everything from gifting the town parcels within it for their own ownership, to develop their own affordable housing, to deed restricted housing, what I would call a little bit more updated approach on our commercial mixed use side. I've had preliminary conversations with San Miguel Power to look at a joint venture for some local power production that I think is real exciting. I have visions for some local indoor growing of food and a lot more. And I'm very confident. I've been around and aware of this project, as I think most of you would know, going all the way back, 20 some years. I'm real familiar with what's in the ground. I work with Mike Jenkins quite a bit, like as we've been over here finishing up this Vista Park Commons. And I feel as though we got a really good handle on really what we have in the ground, what challenges there are over there. And we just need a little bit more support from P&Z in really getting through some of these initial steps. So like the 3-story, we need to be able to configure what's going on the ground so that we can then evaluate what engineering of runoff, 100-year flood, all the things that are required, but we need to know our heights. We need to know, can we go 3 stories? We need to, what's just the best approach? So, and I would like to avoid, and I think maybe Bill and John Clark remember this, when we had to give up a deed restricted unit in Vista Park Commons because we didn't get ahead of the curve enough on this drainage requirement. And that's not it just was something that we didn't know exactly how to work through this 100-year flood requirement that basically came up later on in the process. So we would like to discuss all those things up front so that we're not, oh, sorry, you guys, the pad that we wanted to give you for 6 or 8 or 9 units, we can't do it anymore because the drainage doesn't work or the 100-year flood runoff doesn't work. So, and we can't figure those things out unless we understand what our footprints are. And I'll leave it at that. It's just a process. And I would have to say, along with Doug, we would just like a more collaborative approach. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Michelle.
Do the commission members have any questions for the applicant?
see.
I'm a little bit confused, I think a little bit conflicted on what it is we're doing, because it feels a little bit of like sketch plan-esque, but it's not a sketch plan. But we're kind of being asked to direct if it can be an amendment or it has to be a new PUD, and those seem like two completely separate things.
Yeah, to me, it's a difficult one because we have regulations on the books. We have processes for subdivisions and PUDs. And while I appreciate that Doug and Joe wanting to have a more collaborative process, we can't just throw our existing process out the window in favor of that. And that creates a challenge here. I mean, I'd be totally honest and say I like the idea of reimagining this 30-plus-year-old PUD for the 21st century. But at the same time, I don't disagree with the staff's conclusion that it needs to go through the process. And whether it could be a streamlined process or not, there's just a lot of details. And, you know, I think we've run into this, in my opinion, a lot over the years. Bo, you've got your hand up, I see. Do you want to weigh in before I babble on?
No, I mean, I think you're doing a really good job, Mayor Clark, and kind of to your point, Michelle, and some of the issues that Doug raised. That's one of the reasons that we've offered this work session this evening, is to the extent that Doug and Joe and the applicant, they want to put forth the concepts and ideas that they're looking at, i.e. the height variance and, you know, some of, you know, the change in use, which as per, you know, TJ's memo is a pretty significant change in use in terms of what was originally visioned for that property. And notwithstanding the remark that, well, this is now kind of in more compliance with the existing town master plan, the reality of the situation is that we're still back on those 1990
And that could be
entitlements. So frankly, I think we're, you know, I want to push back a little bit because we're trying to give that forum tonight in terms of, if you guys are looking for feedback of the plan, I think it would be welcome that you get some direction from the Planning Commission, and then from there, you know, if we need to huddle up, but staff is frankly pretty firm with respect to the fact that there's not too much of an amendment process under the code. So we think that this really needs to come back for a PUD, and you can get some reflection from the sketch plan and things of that nature. To the extent that you want to streamline, we're more than happy to do that. And again, as I said, we wanted to offer this forum to the applicant so that they can hear, yeah, you know, we're okay as a planning commission in terms of losing a significant amount of commercial space as was initially envisioned, or, you know, actually we have some reservations with going to third story. So.
Speaking of thanks, Bo. Speaking of the third story, what and this may be a question for the applicant. What is the view shed, or I am not familiar enough with where existing residences or developments are relative to where you wish to place a three-story building, and what that might do in terms of affecting people's views. So either one of you, Joe or
That looks like Doug's got his hand up.
Yeah, I think he wanted to say something before that question. So Doug, if you want to do that and answer the question, great.
I think that from my standpoint, the issue of the height and the view shed from surrounding properties that would be something we could definitely address. Everything's going into 3D models, and, we can look at it from different places. So we can quantify that. But beyond that, we're talking about low slope commercial application roofs to keep the overall height lower than, for example, the Remax building with a fairly tall pitched roof that might do more in terms of view blocking from certain angles. The way that the lot is configured also, I guess the only people who one could say there might be an effect on the mountain view shed would be in the condos. And we have a pretty good setback from that. So I think, we can certainly, as one of the aspects of things that are looked at in terms of showing that mass and scale are appropriate per the general commercial guidelines and in keeping with, health, safety, and welfare. I mean, the town has good standards on how to apply an approval for a conditional use like that. We would have every intention of working closely with staff and then with the Planning Commission to make sure that those are considered and taken into account. On the broader question of the process that John brought up, I guess where we're coming from is when you read the Ridgway Municipal Code section that, I've referred to it in a memo to TJ basically, but there's a section that it talks about when you get pushed into the full subdivision process and what those guidelines are in the code. And that's all very clear. But there's also a category for amended plat, which talks about if you have the primary public utilities in the ground, if you're meeting the overall dimensional requirements, et cetera, there's a checklist that I felt like was pretty well met, with the exception of the heights. And to me, the way the code reads, and someone can correct me if they think I'm wrong, but I think the code basically sets up the GC conditional use process for height as almost a side-by-side approval process to the actual PUD process. And that's what I had proposed in my memo, was that it not get out ahead or behind. It's just that it be treated on the merits of the GC requirements within the code. And so I was just looking closely at the wording of what the Ridgway Municipal Code says on what the options are for carrying forward with a project like this. And the difference here in my mind is largely that the bulk of the public utility and infrastructure are in the ground and approved. And then that starts to create the trigger that got me looking carefully at the wording in the Ridgway Municipal Code. And that's why I threw that out. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of a process, if there's some agreement that we can discuss and agree to that is let's call it a streamlined version of the sketch plan preliminary plat process that makes everyone feel better about getting the information in a way that works to make sure that it's all documented. That's workable, except for the fact that we're not trying to have somebody say it's approved before we see it, but what we are trying to do is somehow front load the discussions on the concepts before we get way out into the engineering world. And that's the goal. And so if there's a reasonable way to reinvent this project with an agreed upon streamlined process that we can talk about and agree to, Joe, correct me if I'm overstepping, but it seems like that's the real goal, is not what label we hang on it quite as much as how we work through some of these core layout questions and use questions to make sure that we have a vibrant, good project before we get down in the weeds and do all the detailed information that's required with a sketch plan right out of the gate. It's basically, you know, all the engineering. And then the preliminary plat is all the engineering suitable for construction. But the sketch plan, when you look at the requirements, you know, there's a lot of information that's required there, and rightfully so, because of it's geared to a brand new subdivision. But we just want to make sure that we can agree on something that makes sense for everybody. Thank you.
Jennifer's got her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to put some concerns that I had out there. And I guess I'm having troubles right now because I would like to know, first of all, if we're going to be treating this as general commercial or mixed use, either or, because that makes a difference to me on how you would go forward in trying to do this. Secondly, the building height, I was concerned about. I do live in the condos, so I'm actually looking out at the piece of property here right in front of my window. So I was concerned about the height because I know, looking at the drawings, the buildings were in front of our windows, basically, and it would block the view of the mountains. So I'm not sure how that works with pricing of how a condo is sold over here. If the pricing goes down, if you can't see the view anymore, if you just see another building. So I was concerned about that and how that's going to be handled. I feel like I don't want to say that we're going to approve a 3-story building when I don't even know if it's approved for residential yet. So I guess I'm still kind of confused on where we should head to.
Yeah, it's complicated. I mean, I'd like to just respond to Doug's take on the idea that this could be considered as an amended plat, that the code refers to replats and amended plats in section 7410 of the code. And 7410B reads amended plats of subdivision plats previously approved by the town or parts of such plats which do not make or require a material change in the extent, location, or type of public improvements and easements provided and are consistent with the design standards of these regs may be submitted, approved, and recorded in accordance with the provisions of this subsection in lieu of other procedures provided for subdivision by these regulations, if all required improvements are in and available to serve the lot. And that's what Doug's referring to. The thing that sticks out to me is that this does not even mention PUDs. If it were just a basic subdivision, I think it would be much more possible to look at it in terms of amended plat process. But because this is a PUD with all the accompanying compromises and custom layout and everything, I just don't think it applies. So that's my take on that question. Now, going back to whether we could come up with a somewhat streamlined process or not, it sounds to me like what the applicants or what the development team would like to get from us tonight is our take on questions like height and the reduction in the amount of commercial square footage, things like that. And I think those are really meaningful questions. I think over the years that everybody on P&Z, with the exception maybe of Jennifer, has heard over and over again where we've approved developments of property zoned as general commercial to be primarily, if not exclusively, residential. And staff has over and over again told us we need to be careful doing that because we're basically reducing our inventory of commercial property. Now, I think Doug has a point on one hand of saying, you know, this lot is sat vacant for, this PUD has been approved and sitting here for 30 plus years without anybody doing anything with it other than the Remax building. And that you could say brings into question whether that much commercial property actually is needed for the town of Ridgway's future. But I think it's naive to think that we can guess what the future needs are. And I think we'd be making a mistake to continue to replace commercial property with residential. Now, that's not to say that I don't think there could be, and that there probably should be a residential component of however this thing proceeds. It's certainly apparent to all of us how great our housing needs are. Whether or not, I guess I would feel more comfortable with the 3-story treatment of the apartments if they were flipped with the mixed use area on the east side, because those three-story buildings right up against the highway, they're not only going to impact the condos, but they're going to impact any development that happens across the street, across the highway to the west. And they're also, while I probably more than a lot of people in Ridgway, I'm in favor of sort of more contemporary architectural design. The design is submitted in this packet for the apartments as one of the first things you see when you drive into Ridgway, with the fairly commercial look and the flat roof. My guess is that there are going to be some people unhappy with that. Now, whether that is a reason to not allow it or not is obviously a really good question, but it's an issue. I guess I think that this PUD would be best handled by kind of going back to the drawing board. I think the rest of us should weigh in on the questions of height and commercial square footage. And then hopefully we can come up with a sort of, as I think Doug mentioned, a combined sketch plan preliminary plat approach to revisit the specific redesign that they want to do, because it's significant. Now, as I said before, I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's a serious improvement from what was originally platted 30 plus years ago, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't go through a process because it's so different. Sorry for the long-winded response there, but that's my take.
So basically what I'm hearing, just to summarize, and maybe we can move forward, is the Planning Commission is not in favor of an amended PUD and thinks that this should start the process over because of the substantial changes. But we are willing to give input on the project. I don't think anyone's opposed to the project. There's going to be some questions about the percentage of commercial that was originally proposed and the percentage reduction, the difference there and what we're looking at. But beyond that, I think we could answer some questions. If anyone thinks I'm missing something on the commission here, speak up.
Well, Michelle, I'd just like to get Bo's take on Doug's reading of the PUD or just weigh in on what he thinks
The amended plat.
of the amended plat.
Certainly, I really appreciate that, and I think it's a fair argument. I'd also ask that TJ weigh in a little bit, but I think TJ's memo did a really good job of outlining the mere fact that we've got kind of some of the initial infrastructure in place does not ignore some of the concerns that were highlighted. The building height, the building envelopes, the parking standards, overall lot coverage, landscaping, the commercial floor area. I mean, and then the pretty significant change in the use. So that's kind of consistently been the town's perspective. Certainly, if the Planning Commission is hearing what we have to say and you feel like, well, no, we don't feel like that this is a significant change, we would take that direction.
I don't think that's what we're hearing.
If I may, Chair, kind of piggyback on what Bo was just saying, that when we received this request, we actually spent a lot of time as staff kind of noodling over this section. And I think we all kind of agree that it's not necessarily written the best, specifically when a PUD wants to change and the subdivision is kind of built out. So we understand and acknowledge that it's kind of a quirky situation. But also we don't have a means to, so what we ended up doing, frankly, when we saw the request and tried to apply this section, this plat amendment section, because the PUD section refers to this section, oh gosh, 7.3.10, I think it is, the plat amendment section. So we kind of, it makes the connection that the PUD amendment could be followed using the plat amendment process. But if you apply that section, then you change plat to PUD, and I think we end up at the same area, that there are significant changes to the PUD based on proposed land uses, heights, dimensional standards, things of that nature, which is where we kind of then come back to other options on the PUD, which is the sketch plan. So just wanted to give you a little bit more on how we arrived at that through that iterative process.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else want to weigh in? I suppose I could, it's time to open it to the public. If not, anyone else? Okay, I'll open it to public comment.
Can you see the hands, Michelle?
Mm-mm.
Joe's got his hand up, Joe Nelson, and then someone named Coburn. Oh, look who's here.
Is
I
that
wondered if that was you
Shay?
guys. Shay and Andrew. Hi, guys.
Joe, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I just wanted to answer Jennifer's, or give a thought for this 3-story concern, that we can go out and put up some story poles if necessary to help everybody perceive, those heights and see the view corridors. That really is pretty insignificant if we can set a plan for going forward that way and just see how everybody feels.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to see what exactly it would look like in front of these condos. And
Yeah.
also, like John said, coming down the highway, I think it's important when people come down that highway that we have, when they first see the town of Ridgway, I don't want them to think that they're still in a city. I mean, we're supposed to be in a small town. So I like John said, it is concerning on what it would look like as you're coming into town as well.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how all this works, so sorry about that.
That's all right. Go ahead.
And to kind of speak to John Clark's thoughts on, and everybody's concern about losing commercial space, I would just like to present that I believe that the town's vision for the future of Ridgway was to actually move more of that commercial to the downtown as that vital district. And so I just wanted to throw that out. And I truly believe our biggest concern is residential currently, and we do have responsibility to make sure we assess commercial area. I really do understand that. And that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still open for public comment if anyone's
Shay's
has
got
any.
Shay.
Go ahead, Shay.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
So good to see some friendly and familiar faces.
Yeah.
Xavier.
Just wanted to share a couple thoughts. So Andrew's here too. We own at 520 Red Cliff, so also neighbors of the project in the same building that Jennifer's in. So appreciate another creative approach from Doug and Joe and Jack here, and trying to get something cool done. I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of, I don't know that it's contradiction, but a little bit of a reason to follow the full subdivision process. So I think I heard Joe and Jack and Doug and kind of explain that you know, they want a collaborative process. They want input before they get to engineering drawings and things like that. And that's exactly how the subdivision process is set up. That is why sketch plan exists, is let's talk about big picture. Let's not engineer things. We don't need to know the grade of your sewer pipe during sketch plan. We need to know your heights, your densities, your basic stuff. And that is the opportunity that is provided to have that collaborative discussion. In addition, the code allows for an informal review. So I don't know if that's what this was scheduled for tonight. When I read the staff report, I kind of took it as the meeting tonight was to determine if this should be a PUD amendment and go that route, or if we should go the full subdivision process route. But it seems like at least what I heard from Joe and Doug tonight, it really supports the whole need to start it informal, have another work session where you talk and dig in about all these details on height and building layout and all of that stuff, and then go to sketch plan, get a little more detailed, and then carry on. That's exactly what it's designed for. This is clearly not a plat amendment. If you look through the history of different plat amendments in the city or in the town, they are for very minor items. So like the one that I could think of off the top of my head was street trees and parkside counting as part of the landscaping requirements. That was an amended plat process that we followed there. So I think it's a pretty big stretch and probably not appropriate to really go down that amended plat process. I think the staff report laid out a lot of the argument for that and did a really nice job. I also don't know, I appreciate the idea to streamline, but I don't know that the code actually allows for not doing a sketch plan. That is the whole reason you want to do a sketch plan and you want to do it well, is you want to avoid things like not addressing drainage in a major development and realizing that when you're very well into engineering details. So that is why you want to do that. Sorry, I'll try to wrap it up. You guys know I could go on forever. But I think, you know, I'm with you, Joe. This is a good property. I think there's a potential to have a really awesome project here. It is a gateway. It is right where you enter town, highly visible for everyone. I actually think you could do a lot more with this property in terms of you know, density and all of that. I understand there are some existing sewer and water mains that have to be, and just general utility easements that have to be planned around. But I would challenge you all to really think hard about what you want this probably last major infill site in the center of our town to look like, and what you want that to say to our community. And then I do appreciate, I think it was Bill's question about the view sheds, because personally that will be my view. And I'd love to have other residences and buildings and really connect that side of town with the rest of town. I think this could be the link that kind of pulls that all together, but I really think something great could happen. And if you want to be creative, like Joe and Doug kind of said, if you want to have that collaborative process, that is exactly what a PUD is for. Everything's negotiated. You get the opportunity to, you know, offer deed restrictions for something else, and have those great discussions about what is wonderful for this community. So I'll stop talking now. Thank you.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you, Shay.
Thank you, Shay. Appreciate it.
Any other public comment?
I have my hand up there. I don't know if you can
I'm
see.
sorry, I can't see any hands. So if people will just speak up, I appreciate it. I don't know why I don't see that, but please state your name and go ahead.
So I'm showing up on here as SSD. My name is Shelley DeConish. Hello. I'm the attorney for the applicants to build Ridgway LLC, Joe Nelson, Jack Young, and Zach Young. And I just would like to say, I think your planner did a really good job of outlining what the potential for the PUD amendment process is in your code. And given that, and he explained very well also what a PUD is, it's just, it lets you vary some things from the straight zone, and it allows, as Shay Coburn just said, an exchange between the town and the applicant to get some public benefits out of the project that, in sort of consideration for these changes maybe to just the underlying straight zone. And I think the PUD amendment process is a perfect process for dealing with this one, because there is so much infrastructure already in, and having a full PUD, a new one, just doesn't seem to lend itself well to this situation. And I think the PUD amendment is exactly the place where you can talk about these things. You can certainly change the allowed uses by a PUD amendment, and you can do these sort of more overarching. It allows the applicant to get some guidance on those overarching things without having to go through the whole restarting the PUD. And I just felt like when I looked at your code and when I heard your planner talking, that would be a good process for this. So thank you very much for listening and taking the time tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will close public comment.
Because it's not a public hearing,
Doesn't really matter.
you don't need to close. We can take public comment at any time in the process. Because
All right.
it's a public
So-
meeting, but not a public hearing.
Where do we go from here? I guess I'm going to ask Preston for some direction. I think,
I think we need to hear from more of the P&Z members. Several members haven't spoken up at all. At least a
okay,
couple. My suggestion would be that we get everybody to weigh in on at least their thoughts on the process. Just so that we can start to gather consensus.
Russ, you have something for us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one a little bit. I understand. I can kind of see both sides of where they're trying to go. There's a process we want them to follow. At the same time, they've already got a fair amount of it in. They are kind of sticking to the previous footprints. The extent is, according to the amendment change, the extent is what is really bothering me, is because it's going from commercial. The intent is to go from commercial to a bit of commercial and a mixed use, and then the rest to residential. I do have some concerns about what that's going to look like in that open spot coming into town. Although there is going to be a fairly large development right across the road from it with the triangle lot, which I believe has 35-foot height. It's set back a little bit more from the road. I don't know how the corridor views or mountain views varies throughout town. It seems like, I understand people's concern, nobody wants to lose that, but that doesn't always play into consideration. I mean, there's a development going in right across the street from me that will take my mountain view. There's another one that we've just approved over on Charles. It's going to provide a loss of mountain view. So I'm not real sure how that ties in or what, what carries where. So the biggest concern I guess I really have with this right now is, again, the extent and what the actual view as it's coming into town is right now. As far as actually following the process or amending, you know, I suppose the process is defined for a reason. I would guess that there's probably some money to be saved in not having to restart the process and go back to sketch plan. And I can understand that. I also, the other thing I had with that is in trying to keep costs down is there's a comment about providing deed restricted units. And I'm really kind of losing my faith in those right now based off two of the last deed restricted things we've had come through where the builder says, this is my cost. I can't provide we're providing $500,000 deed restricted units. That doesn't make any sense at all. So given that they're talking about putting residences in there right now, I have concerns about being able to make that, you know, is that really what we need is more residences? I know people want to live here, but you know, nobody can build anything that you know, we're trying to me, what we need to be focused on is affordable housing. And that's really getting hard to do, especially if we just deed restrict it. So I'm curious how that's all going to play out in this as well. So I'll stop rambling there.
Yeah, I can speak up as well. Just listening, it sounds like there's already a lot of confusion about kind of, you know, how much change will be from the original. And I think that to me, it feels really fairly clear that it needs to go back to the full process through a sketch plan. It seems to me like there's a lot of change, and personally, as a newer member, I feel like there's a lot at play, and not just, I mean, and it sounds like there's a lot of energy too around what we want this space to represent for our community. And so I think that I can see both sides for sure, but I also feel like from my perspective, it seems like the code really says to bring it back to the sketch plan. That's my perspective on it.
I guess I would follow up that, Joe, just I'll let you talk in a second. I just, in terms of trying to add some thoughts based on what Russ and Jennifer said, I think, you know, we're about to review a water study that we've contracted in the last 6 months or a year. There's a lot of concern around the community with carrying capacity in our water plant based on how this, what we used to call a drought, seems to be becoming something permanent in the way of a aridification of the West, so to speak. Do we have the water that we need to keep approving these fairly large residential subdivisions? I think we will find out more next week when we have the workshop to review the findings of that process. And the other thing I wanted to add is, all due respect to Ms. DeConis, she mentions that a PUD amendment process, there is no PUD amendment process that I see in the code. There's an amended plat process, but that specifically refers to subdivisions. And because this is a PUD, I think it takes it out of that realm. And I'm largely in agreement with everyone else who said that they think it looks pretty clear that there's enough difference. I mean, we haven't even talked about the lake that's in the new water body of water that's in some of the drawings. That's a piece that we don't know where that water is coming from, and there's just obviously detail upon detail that needs to be figured out, and I don't see how those details can be figured out in any sort of streamlined, let alone kind of more informal process. Joe's got his hand up. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, John. I do appreciate all the concerns over water and all of that. And I do think one of the unique opportunities over here is that we do have water rights. We have water storage facilities that are really do work. There is an upgrade needed to the full-time pressurized irrigation system, but I think most of you will note, and especially like even Jennifer and Shay that have a home over there, it's probably some of the best landscaping in Ridgway and the most, I'll call it very well maintained and gets plenty of water because we do have it. And so just to answer or contribute to John's comment about water, one of the reasons I like this over here, and it's the same thing with Vista Park Commons, is that we're not burdening the town for landscape water as when people put landscaping in on, let's call it the other side of the highway, they're relying on town water to irrigate their landscaping. And seems logical to me that this would be one of those areas where we could minimize that impact. Thank you.
That's a valid point.
And I would add to that too, we would like a water feature over there. We do have enough water rights to handle more evaporation if that's really the way it goes. This is just such a preliminary concept. And, this is what I felt we needed a while back was a work session with you guys. And so here we are getting comments and we really appreciate it. I would also suggest, I know this will be, if this is the proposed direction for a sketch plan and new PUD process, we can easily develop 3D modeling to work together on view planes and the highway view, what that's going to look like coming into town. We just really needed some feedback from you guys on all of this, including this process that didn't, a lot of different opinions about it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Dakonis has her hand up again too.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I just wanted to reference the sections of the code that talk about the PUD amendment and then the related process. Those are, and I think TJ mentioned these earlier, but I'm just going to be specific since Mr. Clark mentioned that. It's section 7-3-16E, which allows PUD amendments, and then it refers to the process set forth in 7-3-23. I certainly don't want to argue with you about your policy making. I just wanted to reference that that provision in the code. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I have one last comment or concern, and that is a concern with, and I'm all for the collaboration, etc. But I think avoiding the full process puts a lot of pressure and work on staff. As I see it, I'd love to have Preston weigh in on this if he would like, but it's certainly a concern for me that it puts the onus on staff to do things that we would normally do if the process goes full full process. So that's it.
You've got another hand raised from Zach Young.
Go ahead,
Hello.
Zach.
Hi. First of all, that image on my screen here, I don't know where that picture came from, but please don't judge based on that. I just wanted to throw a couple of things in. The people concerned that live in the condos and up on the hill. The existing PUD, which was approved, I mean, that I think we all would agree would be a hideous way to come into town in today's world. And we're trying to reduce footprint, have a lot more green space, make it attractive, and work with the town and in general and the people there. I grew up there as a kid, so I remember, you know, when the cowboys were riding horses around town and what the town used to be. It was a lot of trailers, and it's becoming a beautiful place. So I just want to make sure that we all recognize that approved PUD being a unattractive option that we have. That's it.
Thanks, Zach. I don't want to cut anyone off, but I feel like we're going in circles. It sounds like this needs to be a new PUD. It sounds like the commission is excited about the possibilities for this project and really willing to work with the developer on what it can be. But that in order to do that, you know, we have to go through that sketch plan process. And I think in the end, it takes some pressure not only off of staff, but off of the developer, because you know what you're getting into, like you've said, before you spend a bunch of money on engineering and drawings and changes. And that's, like, I thought Chase said it beautifully. That's what the whole process is set up for. It's not, we're not trying to make it difficult for you. Like you've said, you want to work with us. We're happy to work with you, but that's why that process is in place. So it's like, let's do that. Let's make that happen. And what I'm hearing, I don't think there's enough support on the commission to have this be an amendment to the PUD. Staff isn't in support of it, and I've heard one person that's on the fence, and that's where we're at. So if I have spoken incorrectly, please someone speak up.
I think that's right.
So I'd ask TJ or Preston how we move forward. I'm not cutting this off. I'm happy to continue to give input if this is the place to do it.
If I may, you know, again, this is kind of uncharted territory, but I think I think it's clear that what the commission is saying is we want to go through a full process. So I guess we would just ask, and maybe we can set up a meeting with the applicant team in the next week or two and talk about what's to be submitted for the sketch plan and start going through that process. The code tells us that process, and we can just kind of take it through that way and hopefully set up a meeting with the planning commission with a full, complete sketch plan application as soon as possible.
I'm in agreement to that, and I can't speak for the whole commission on this, but I'd be happy to have extra meetings if the applicant is ready and needs our input to move this along. Is the rest of the commission, would the rest of the commission be willing to do that?
Sure.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would the applicant like any more? Does the applicant have any more questions for us before we get to that point? Like, we're happy to answer more questions if you have them.
I think I've gotten the feedback that I need right now. I really appreciate the time. And might check in with Doug and see if he has any more thoughts.
Go ahead, Doug.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. I think I hear what you guys are saying. And, I think that maybe the flexibility comes in the gray areas in the code, where on a case-by-case basis as guided by staff, maybe we don't need to do a new geohazard report if one is already provided outset of the process. Or maybe there's things that we can cross off of the big checklist because of the things that are already in place. And that way, it's not that it's been ignored, it's just that it's been acknowledged and addressed, but not necessarily by saying as a default position, if you don't hit every check on every box on the full checklist for a sketch plan and then preliminary plat, then you have an incomplete submission. So I guess I would just broach that as my vision of perhaps how, without circumventing any process or making things more difficult for anybody, we could, I use the word streamline again, but it's sort of like being selective in what things are necessary and needed to adequately and properly review the project, but also being open to a discussion which would likely come in the format of us talking to staff about it and then coming back to a meeting, whether it's an informal follow-up or the actual sketch plan review, and having an opportunity to explain, ideally supported by staff, why this one particular thing off of this checklist wasn't addressed in exactly the way that one would if one were doing a brand new PUD or a brand new subdivision. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a way to maybe collaborate and not shortchange any of the decision-making process, but also to try to streamline the process to the extent that's possible within the fact that there are a lot of things that are, being modified, and then I think, bringing to the table how much commercial will be specifically remaining. We've gotten some feedback that'll allow us to say, okay, gateway issues, what is the look? Where is the location of the taller stuff? So I think that all of those things can be brought into the mix. And I think Joe's idea of story polls, once we sort of get a good arrangement going, that should help with visualization, aided by 3D views. But just to make sure that, on this parcel, it's not sort of a, oh, well, I guess it's gonna happen and here we go, but that people can sort of confidently say, yeah, this is where that's gonna be. Here's how the view looks through that corridor. Here's what the building presentation is from the highway for the gateway, et cetera, and working through it in a process where we work together on it. So thank you for your time.
I think that sounds great. And I think TJ was approving the work together part of existing, but I'll let him chime in.
Yeah, if I just might, that, I don't think that there's any hesitation from staff in understanding what and allowing what's already applicable out there to comply or work for that. Frankly, we've just never gotten the opportunity to get to that point. We've never been able to agree on a process through which we can review things because we've been on this impasse of there are significant changes, there aren't any significant changes. So I think now that we have the clarity from the commission, so thank you all very much for the dialogue, I think we have our marching orders and can certainly work with the applicant through the prescribed processes in the code, allow input as able and necessary and needed. I think that that's exactly what it's written for. So again, we're not trying to make an undue burden on the applicants, but we want to make sure that it's a product that is appropriate. And all the boxes are being checked, whether they've already been completed and are still applicable, or completed and need to be updated. That is why there are technical staff at the town to be able to evaluate that and bring those recommendations to you. So that's what I just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, TJ. I think we're excited about this project and excited to look at the improvements. That's great. We're glad that you want to do it better.
I for one, am really excited to see that parcel come full circle and become something that, as we've all said, that we can be proud of. It's languished far too long, and I'm glad you guys are looking at doing that. So onward. and upward.
Does anyone else want to comment on this? So
I would just like to come back to, you know, the affordable, the concern over affordable units getting out of control. You know, our proposal is to, you know, gift the town with the infrastructure in place. And that's a significant contribution to keeping those costs in line. It is the asset base for the town to go, you know, search out other grant funding that, say, for instance, can't get as a developer, but the town has access to it, and especially if they have the gifted pad with the infrastructure in place. So I just wanted to share that the concern that how do you achieve affordable housing, I have lots of ideas for that. And you know, very few people know my background in that arena, and I have quite a bit of experience in it. And there are challenges, but I know that there's great possibilities in it. And I would just to reflect on even our Vista Park Commons here, you know, we're still going to be able to sell those deed restricted units here for, you know, 230,000, which it's still okay. It gives an entry point. And I just think there's so many possibilities in affordable housing, and I just have never been able to, you know, share all of that. And I really just I don't quite agree with that. It's not possible, affordable housing. So
I don't
anyway,
think we're saying it's not possible. We're saying that we haven't seen it yet.
I got it. Yeah.
Especially lately. I mean, that we all know that the cost of construction is now gone through the roof, material costs, supply chain issues. I mean, your point's well taken.
Totally.
If the town has ground that we own, we can try to find ways to you know, partner with a developer to do something like what the Telluride Foundation is doing.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
great. I mean, we're not developers though. So it's not just as simple as saying, here's a piece of ground, town of Ridgway, go and build something. So, I mean, but I think the devil's in the details. I think we can work it out. And what Russ was saying, and I totally agree with, is just the problem is in the last 5 to 10 years, the product that have started out supposing to be affordable haven't been, because of the cost of construction, the cost of land, the cost of materials, all of that. So
yeah, I have to say, it just kills me to think that I wanted to sell these at Vista Park for, you know, 150 to 200,000 maybe, and you know, they're more up to 275 to 350. You know.
Well, that's still way more affordable
That's
than
still
anything else that's out there.
damn affordable. Yeah.
Well, and that's where I say I just believe it's possible, and especially with a parcel like the one Lot 3 PUD is. It's a significant enough size that there is room enough in there to make a really decent contribution to the town's affordable housing program. And Telluride Foundation it's just very cool that they're working in the region here in Ridgway, and I would love to share that concept with them. We just needed to get to a point where we understood what we could do. And so thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
So there's no motions or votes needed on that. That was simply a work session.
Yep.
Does anybody need a break? Do we need to break for a minute? Are you guys good?
I need at least a bathroom break.
All right,
Just
let's take 5 minutes.
Okay.
Back at 7:05.
All right. Go ahead. Do whatever you can. Yeah.
I hope it'll be out real soon.
We'll just give Bill a minute. All right, everyone's back. I'm just scrolling through the packet to the next agenda item. Aha, agenda item number 2. Is a discussion of a special improvements district. The purpose of this memorandum is to outline the possibility of creating a special improvement district for development east of Highway 550 in Ridgway. I think from here, assuming that Bo is with us, he is, I will let him take it.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate it. So, you know, first and foremost, we couldn't let you guys have that light of an agenda. So we figured we would add something more to it. But as you guys can tell, particularly with the previous agenda item, it seems to be that there's projected to be some additional growth east of Highway 550, also what's envisioned in the town's comprehensive plan. With that, that's probably going to entail some additional infrastructure, water and sewer lines, streets and sidewalks, things of that nature. And so kind of given the frankly reality that this is coming down the pipeline, and the fact that it could be somewhat costly, particularly because water treatment and sewer treatment are on the west side of the highway. Wanted to get the information to initially the Planning Commission to see if there's any interest with proceeding with kind of some additional information and some kind of more in-depth analysis about the potential of a special improvement district for east of Highway 550. And so what my short memo has kind of outlined in the packet is, the special improvement district creation and process is not something that's wholly new to Colorado. It's allowed both under state statute and the town's charter. And as indicated in the memo, there's a code provision that's reserved for kind of special improvement districts, but hasn't really been fully developed. So, what does it look like? Well, it was kind of brought about and has gained popularity post-Tabor in an effort to kind of look at funding improvements without necessarily having to go to a vote and of the electorate. And kind of what it looks like is that it can use specifically for infrastructure and not for kind of any sort of general improvement. But it's not a special district, and then it's a kind of a Title 32 district, like a fire protection district, but more of a funding mechanism. So that's kind of the broad brush, but wanted to turn it over to the Planning Commission to see if there's any desire to give direction to staff to kind of follow up with this in greater detail, to see if, let's get a kind of a projected list of what we think that infrastructure entail, that kind of future infrastructure would look like based on projected growth. And then, based on that, how would we look to pay for it? And this could be one option.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me too. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's a definite yes. We can certainly discuss it further as needed. But I don't see why we would be opposed to getting more information about that.
Yeah, and so, I don't really need to belabor the point, but really what we'd want to do would be I really want to work with Joanne and Preston in terms of developing, based on what we have for available development, based on what the projections are in the master plan, developing the list of what we feel like that infrastructure would look like, and plugging in some preliminary numbers, and then saying, okay, what would that allocation be for those that would be impacted, and how do we cover that? And we can certainly kind of follow up in two ways, with one, providing that list, and then two, probably providing both a copy of this in the town council packet, but looking at the ordinance to kind of supplement the town code for provisions that are not, that we'd want to expand beyond state statute. So.
Can I ask you a question on that, Bo?
I'm sorry, Russ?
Yeah, I've got a question here. In looking through this, this comment on the special improvements districts, it says that one method of financing improvements is through the issuance of special assessment bonds payable through the assessment levied against impacted properties.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that if we decide to do something like this, anybody who wants to develop has to pay those bonds, or where does that come from? Do we
Yeah, so basically what we would do is it would be probably an election that would go to a ballot question that would go to the voters. And there's two different ways that you can do it. You can do it just for those that would be within the impacted area, or you could do those that would be kind of throughout the town. But what you would want to do is basically you can sell the bond. So if we're trying to raise, say, hypothetically $20 million to install streets, water, sewer, sidewalks, we could get the funding up front through the issuance of the bonds and then the repayment through kind of the development process.
Okay. Thank you.
So would it apply to just new development or existing development?
It would probably, it depends, is the short answer. I think you would you have to look at the impact and the impact on the property. And that's where you have a limitation with the special improvement district, and that there has to be a nexus or a connection between the improvement that's being installed and having that owner fund it. So if we were going to do something for the existing developments that are out there, we would need to show that there's also an improvement for those developments as well.
And then can that percentage be different? I mean, I would imagine you could structure it.
I think so is the short answer. Yeah. So.
And is it collected with property tax? How is that done?
Usually there's kind of a number of mechanisms that you can do it. Usually you're looking at, like, if it's a component of when it could be a component of property tax. It could be if somebody comes to pull a building permit, that could be something that could be used. So there's different mechanisms in terms of the taxation and the collection.
So is it similar to an HOA special assessment?
I think that that's a pretty good analogy, frankly, but for the fact that it kind of deals with, you have to have that impact, whereas like a HOA special assessment, you might just have, it's for one building or one improvement or something like that, but you have to have the connection. So like for the previous applicant, if there was a special assessment, we'd have to show, well, we're installing sidewalks and streets that are improving that project. So.
Which could otherwise be required of the development. So in some ways that it might disperse the cost.
That's true. Yeah. And so, I think that because we're shifting some of the infrastructure, there's going to be the potential for shifting some of the infrastructure east of the highway. These might be not necessarily the standard, like I said, street and sidewalk costs that your developer is usually kind of required to cover through our process, but some of the stuff that to get the infrastructure there, to get the utility there, that we might be looking at some of the offset. So through the SID.
This might be a question for Preston, but do we currently have sewer going to the other side of the highway? We do.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lift station.
Sure. Yeah.
Wasn't that also part of the triangle development? Was there?
So they're giving us an easement and kind of a line across, but it's just getting us across the highway there. So
It's just an easement.
no, they're going to, correct me if I'm wrong here, Preston, but they're going to install the line, but it's just going to be to the point east of the highway. So
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and then I guess the only other question I had on this is how much more, it sounded like this was primarily going to be for residential concerns. And I guess the question is how much more is actually over there to develop? Looking at the zoning map, we already see the Vista Park Commons in there, and then whatever ends up happening with lot 3, and there's lot 1 and 1A, and then the only other thing I'm seeing on the other side of the highway is some future development out past Vista Terrace. If it's focused primarily on residential.
Yeah, that's correct. So there's some stuff kind of east of Vista Commons. I think that there's about 80 acres there. There's also what we refer to as the McChesney Minor, which is above Vista Terrace subdivision. So.
Yeah, I think it's, I think exploring the possibility of this is, it's a proactive way of, seeing how we can finance growth, and growth seems to be moving right along. So I think I think we need to explore the possibility for sure. So yeah, thanks for bringing this to our attention, actually.
Mhm.
Anyone else? I think you have your answer. Do you have any
All
other?
right.
Yes,
Well,
Bo?
that sounds great. So yeah, you've got a hand now. Nope.
Two of them.
Let's, someone speak up.
Coburn's first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
There's
Hey,
serious
guys.
echo
Is
going
that-
on.
I think you got some feedback going. It looks like you're on twice.
You're still muted. There you go.
You would have this down.
So Jared needs to go in the other room or something, it sounds like. I mean, not Jared,
Andy,
Andrew,
Andrew.
the other Coburn. Try again.
Should we go with the other person that had their hand up and come back?
Yeah, we've got Susie with her hand up. Go ahead, Susie.
Hey, everybody. Hi, John. Thank you. This is something I was thinking of. I
This
do own
Susie
a,
Mayfield?
yes, it is Susie
All right.
Mayfield. Sorry about that.
That's right. I thought it was.
I do own a condo over at the Pondos as well. And something I would be interested if this type of financing could cover an improvement to get people across the highway safer as pedestrians and bicyclists. It would be wonderful to either have an underpass or something that's better than just waiting for the traffic lights to stop.
I agree. Good point. We've talked about that for decades.
So I guess it would just be something that Bo could look into to see if something like this would be considered an infrastructure project.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would be within the bounds of kind of a little bit difficulty with respect to showing the nexus for the impacted properties, but certainly it can be used for streets and sidewalks, and I think potentially overpasses or underpasses.
Could that be GoCo funded from the state, to increase pedestrian traffic? Because I know that it's always, on this side of town, you rarely walk across to get to the other side of the highway because it's too sketchy.
Yeah, and I would defer to Joanne. She's kind of our GoCo guru with respect to what's available. But yeah, I mean, safe route to schools, there's other kind of funding that's there. Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Susie. Want to try again, Shay?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. Is it better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
You'd think I'd figure it out. The internet here is not good. So we have to phone connect and internet connect. That's great. I just wanted to mention when I read the memo, I was a little nervous that like all the properties on the east side were going to be the ones paying for it. And that is, the only or some of the few affordable units in the town. And yes, that's where I own property as well. But I know you guys are all sensitive to that. And then also just considering how much the town has consistently asked that development pay its own way. So being careful about how we're, what we're paying for with a special improvement district versus what the developer really needs to pay for. So thank you.
Good point.
Anyone else? Do you guys see any hands?
No hands.
Look, Mom. no.
Bo, any more questions?
No, I mean, I think we've got direction. I'll work with Joanne in terms of developing what that list of infrastructure looks like, and we'll probably bring it both to the council and back to the planning commission as we continue down this road. So
Joe Nelson.
Great, thank you.
No. Joe, did you want to weigh in on this topic?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I just want to thank Bo for bringing that up as a, in the way he did, and as a special improvement district, as a component in sharing some of those kind of big burdens. Development can handle some of it, and developers can handle some of it. But I do believe that we all know that that gets pretty expensive. So I think the opportunity to share in some of those costs is a really good direction. And I just wanted to contribute that.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
The only thing we have left is the approval of the minutes from the January 25th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I believe we have to do a roll call vote on that.
Do we?
I don't know. I thought so.
Oh, okay.
We're encouraging the roll call for when there's the remote. Meeting.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes. Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Franz,
Aye.
Lisk,
Aye.
Nelson.
I wasn't here.
Oh, that's right. You're abstaining. I even have that written down.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Commissioner Montague.
Aye. Let's see here. There's some more things at the bottom that I almost missed. Glad I scrolled down. Oh no, it's the minutes. Do we have any updates from town council or anything else we need to discuss?
I don't think so. I just was skimming the council agenda from earlier this month, and there wasn't anything that was directly relevant to P and Z, I don't think.
We've got the water report coming up on Monday that's being presented to council on Zoom. And I believe I believe Preston sent us a link and it's available on the town website to read ahead of time. And he told me that it's very interesting reading. And then the people that prepared it will be open, presenting it and open for questions on Monday. So I think it's probably a good thing for the planning commission to hear if everyone is available. And I don't have a whole lot other than that. I thought that the first item went pretty well. So nice work, everyone.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Preston, do you have anything for us? We haven't even heard from you tonight. Are you there?
I'm here, Michelle. Contrary to popular belief, I'm here.
Do you have anything else for us?
I don't. Thanks for bringing up the water supply assessment. It's true. I'm super pumped. I'm jazzed about the workshop on Monday. It's very interesting reading. If you all have delved into it yet, best of luck. It's not easy, very technical, and can get convoluted pretty quick. So urge you to write down any questions you all have to pose to our consultants and even Joanne on Monday. I'm sure there'll be a ton of really good questions just to make sure everyone really grasps or gets clarity on what the ultimate recommendations are, the findings, some of the data modeling, and then of course, kind of where we stand in general. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you all have a chance to put your eye to it.
Thanks, Preston. I just thought of something else we haven't talked about in a while, and that is a town planner. Did anyone apply?
We are a little slim on applicants for the position. So we'll, I don't have the best update there, other than we'll need to continue the path of trying to get the word out there that the position is available, and then circle around and evaluate how to shift, hopefully soon, from the recruitment phase to the hiring phase.
When I see Shay's still on here, perhaps she's made a horrible mistake and wants to come back.
Yeah.
Or TJ wants to leave his lucrative practice and be the planner for town of Ridgway. Barring either of those things, I guess we'll continue on in our process.
And just for the record, I've asked TJ that like 15 times just in the last 2 months. And I've definitely asked Shay that like 15 times in the last 2 months too.
All
So
right.
Just want to make sure no one's making mistakes. Anyone else have anything?
No.
I would then, I don't even think I have to move. I think I just declare the meeting adjourned.
All right.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer it, but I don't.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And Preston, you'll let us know if we perhaps can meet in person next month?
yes, I will.
One way
I'll
or
let you
another.
guys know one way or another.
And
I'll let
council
you all
kind of
know.
makes that decision. They decide for themselves and then that kind of goes to everyone. Fair enough. I mean, I don't think I'm going to have a consensus of people that say, no, we're meeting in person, even if no one else is. So we're on board.
Fingers crossed.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
Thanks, everyone.
And I hate.